I'm here in the geographic center of the Yucatan Peninsula in the colorful city of Valladolid, which I consider to be one of the more underappreciated towns in the country. I'm going to base here for a few days to soak in the atmosphere of this predominantly Mayan city. And while here, I'm going to venture out to Chichen Itza, one of Mexico's best known archaeological sites. So let's get started. This city was named after Valladolid, Spain, the one-time Spanish capital. And with the name came a bit of Arabic influence to the Yucatan. For Valladolid derives from an Arabic expression which means Balad al-Walid, or literally city of Al-Walid. But there's also some odd circumstances associated with the town. Valladolid was originally located north of here until residents complained that there were too many mosquitoes there and petitioned that the town be moved. So in 1545, Valladolid was built here, atop the ruins of a Mayan town called Zaki. In fact, many of the stones from Zaki went to construct the buildings you see here today. The Yucatan Peninsula is one big limestone platform, rare among places on Earth where there's jungle. There are no visible rivers here, but thanks to rainfall that percolates through the limestone, there are countless underground reservoirs. They open up to the surface as cave-like sinkholes called cenotes. Yucatan has thousands of them, and Valladolid has this one in the middle of town that was a water source for the Maya long before the Europeans arrived. Ordinarily, this place would be covered with people coming here to swim in its crystal clear and cold water. But unfortunately, I'm here at a time when there's remodeling. I'm here in the former church and convent of San Bernardino de Siena, built by the Franciscans in the 1550s, with its rich red tiled floors and pinkish red painted tile walls. The place is now a museum, but it's a great place to get an idea of what life was like for the Spanish friars in the outback of Yucatan. This well-fortified compound isn't just any religious center. It represented the front lines of Spanish colonialism in Yucatan in the 16th century, a place for religious indoctrination, a way of assimilating the local Maya people into Catholicism and thus as subjects of the Spanish crown. The structure you see behind me here on the convent grounds is what the friars built over an existing cenote. Cenotes are very common in Yucatan. In fact, almost 2/3 of the world's cenotes are found here. They were often just places that were used for practical purposes as a source of water, but the Maya used them also as ceremonial centers, often believing that it was an entryway to the spirit world. This is why I adore places like Valladolid. It's because you can venture away from the usual tourist path, get into the neighborhoods, and find, well, a church like this, the Church of Santa Ana, a neighborhood church that is very, very old. It began to be built in the late 1500s. It was completed in the early 1600s. And it was never intended as a place of worship for the colonizing Spaniards. It was one of several churches built specifically to indoctrinate the local Maya population into Catholicism. And for that reason, Mass has been held here in Maya for the last several hundred years. Here across the street from the Santa Ana Church is the park where in 1847 an early Mayan martyr of the so-called caste war, the rebellion of the Mayans against the Mexican state, was killed. And there's a plaque in the park that has long honored him. But interestingly, about 50 or 60 years ago, the Mexican government erected another monument, the one you see behind me, which is a small-scale replica of the monument to the Niños Héroes, the teenaged heroes of Chapultepec Park in the battle against U.S. invaders in that same year, 1847. So it's more or less a battle of Mexican history, if you will, in a Mayan neighborhood which has long grown accustomed to it.
No matter the neighborhood, you see a lot of civic pride in Valladolid, in people's homes and in public buildings.
Well, it's a little noisy on the outdoor patio where I'm eating, but with a view of the Zocalo and lots of happy people around me, I feel like this is going to be a good meal. In fact, it has to be Mayan. Pukchuk, grilled pork fillet, marinated and served with tomato sauce, red onion, and oranges.
And for dessert, across the plaza, some banana bread and a fruit smoothie.
It's a gorgeous morning, and I'm headed to Chichen Itza, one of the better known of the Maya ruins, and after Teotihuacan outside Mexico City, the country's second most visited archaeological wonder. Chichen Itza is about an hour's drive from Valladolid. One can get there by either using a colectivo or a local bus. I don't know which form of transportation I'll end up with yet, but the bus station is about 6 blocks from the apartment, so we'll soon find out. By the way, I don't think I've mentioned where I'm staying here in Valladolid. It's the Geyser Apartments, a small studio with a kitchenette that includes a microwave, mini fridge, sink, and table for 2. It has air conditioning, a ceiling fan, and a great Wi-Fi, and it backs up to a beautiful garden filled with fruit trees. So I've got a ticket for a local bus at 7:30. It's 30 pesos, or about $1.50 US. It's still relatively early here at Chichen Itza. The tour buses en masse have not arrived, and yet, as you see, there are still plenty of people milling about, people who've come early, who sought to take advantage of the early morning light. Chichen Itza literally means at the mouth of the well of the Itza. The Itza being an elite subset of the Maya, who at its peak controlled a vast trading network that stretched from central Mexico to the southern tip of Central America. This is the largest of the famous Mayan ball courts, where great competitions were fought with life or death consequences. The object was to get a rubber ball inside one of the 2 circles on either side of the stadium, and the losers were executed.
By the way, that clapping you hear, tourists who can't seem to resist testing Chichen Itza's acoustics.
This site entered the popular imagination in 1843 with the publication of Incidents of Travel in the Yucatan by adventurer John Lloyd Stephens and illustrations by Frederick Catherwood. They famously mapped the then known Maya world from Honduras to Yucatan. But things got really interesting in 1894 when the U.S. consul to Yucatan, a man named Edward Herbert Thompson, managed to buy Hacienda Chichen, which included the ruins. For 30 years, Thompson explored the ancient city, and between 1904 and 1910, secretly dredged this place, Chichen Itza's sacred cenote, coming up with a treasure trove of gold, copper, and jade objects, many of which wound up in the Peabody Museum at Harvard University. Thompson ended up being charged with theft in 1926, although by that time he had left the country and wasn't prosecuted. In fact, later court rulings failed to convict him of doing anything illegal here. With a civilization as advanced as the Maya, nothing happened by chance here. The construction of this place was strictly according to purpose. Take, for example, the main pyramid behind me, referred to as El Castillo. In accordance with the solar year, there were 365 steps constructed to get inside at the top. 91 steps on each of 4 sides, equaling 364, and 1 more to enter the temple.
You'll notice there are lots of souvenir vendors at Chichen Itza. Some of them set up on either side of surplus antiquities.
One really good thing about Chichen Itza is that even though the crowds have gathered in the sun-baked courtyard where there's very little shade to see the great monuments and structures here, one can always escape into the surrounding forest, which is kept park-like, very pleasant and cool, with lots of bird sounds. It kind of makes you wonder how Stevens and Catherwood felt as they emerged from this jungle to see this mighty sight.
My last day in Valladolid before moving on to Merida, I spent poking around town, doing as little as possible. Valladolid is its own entertainment, especially at nightfall, when the streets come alive and the Zocalo fills up.
Can you hear these birds? Maybe the better question is, can you hear me over the birds?